the Instructor Podcast with Terry Cook, talking with leaders, innovators, experts and game changers about what drives them.
Welcome to the Instructor Podcast. This is a show that helps you become an even more awesome driving instructor and potentially run a better driving school. As always, I am your jolly northern host, Terry Cook. I'm delighted to be here, but even more delighted that you have chosen to listen because we are back with Season 7. Who would have thought it 3 years ago that we'd get all the way to Season 7? But a big thank you for listening, whether you have listened from Episode 1, this is your first episode, or anywhere in between. But those of you that have been listening for a while will know that I like to mix things up as we go along. I like to keep things fresh, add a bit of creativity, and provide better content for you. So with that in mind, there are some changes coming up. So first of all, going forward, every season is going to have its own unique theme. And the theme of Season 7 is road safety, because I believe as instructors, we will embrace road safety in the main part, but we don't necessarily embrace the road safety sector. And in response to that, they don't always embrace us. And I'm looking to bridge that gap. I'm hoping that we can gain some resources and information, and as always, inspiration from the road safety sector guests I have on this season. But I'm also hoping that we can reach out to them and help them as well. But the other big change this season is that we are sponsored. So Season 7 is sponsored by Bright Coaching. And I am genuinely delighted to have Bright Coaching on board as a sponsor because Stewart is someone I've admired for a little while. I've got to know him over the last couple of years. And Stewart Lochrie, who is the founder of Bright Coaching, I have been really impressed with what he's done, and it seems apt that Bright sponsors this season because they bring road safety into what they're doing, into their trainings, in particular their professional diploma. So genuinely really chuffed to have Bright Coaching on this season. And if you want to find out any more, head over to www.brightcoaching.net and make sure you sign up to their newsletter to keep up to date with all the latest goings on over there. But back to today's episode. For this first episode, I am joined by Rebecca Morris of RoadPeace. RoadPeace is the national charity for road crash victims, and I thought this was the perfect way to start off this season to look at some of the consequences of when things go wrong. And it was a pleasure talking to Rebecca. We've got some amazing resources that we can share with students and parents and on social media, and hopefully some of you guys will reach out and take part in the RoadPeace Challenge as well. So I hope you guys like this, but make sure you hang about to the end of the show because we've got a special bonus interview with Stewart Lochrie, the founder of Bright Coaching, talking about road safety in general within our sector, why maybe we don't utilise it as much as we could, and how we can do that going forward. So make sure you hang about to the end of the show for that. But the last thing I want to say to you is make sure you are clicking subscribe. If you enjoy this episode, if you find it useful, please click subscribe. Not only will you get every episode that we do drop straight into your feed when it comes out, but you will also help me grow the show. It's the single biggest way for you to help me grow the show. So whatever you're doing, unless you're driving, click subscribe now. But for now, let's get stuck into the show. So today on the Instructor Podcast, we are joined by Rebecca Morris. How are we doing, Rebecca?
Really good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
No, delighted to have you on. Really chuffed to get you on this season of the podcast. And let me see if I can get this right. You are the Director at Vision Zero Communications and Head of Communications at RoadPeace. Is that right?
That's correct.
Excellent. I'm chuffed with that one. Now, I want to start off with a question that I'm going to be asking everyone on this series, or almost everyone on this series, and that is around Vision Zero. So I'm going to ask you to define it. But just before I do, a little bit of context. I put out a poll on my Facebook to driving instructors, asking them, how well they knew what Vision Zero was. And I think it was 85% either said they had never heard of it or had heard of it, but didn't know what it was. So that's kind of where this is coming from. So initially, what's your definition of Vision Zero?
Yeah, I don't think that surprises me, actually, that people didn't really know that. I mean, it's something that some areas of the country, some safer roads, partnerships, police forces, local authorities have embraced. And some areas of the country, I think it's maybe a vision for the future, but in other areas, perhaps not on the agenda yet. If at all, who knows? I think it's very much a local thing at the moment in the UK. It's obviously happened across other areas of the world, across the US and places like that. There are lots of Vision Zero strategies in place. In the UK, what do we mean by Vision Zero? It's the aspiration that no one will be killed or seriously injured on our roads. Some people find that difficult to grasp. I think I can totally understand why that concept is difficult to grasp, because it seems a little bit challenging, and that's, so that's understandable. I think that people probably have that view because, last year alone, 1,766 people were killed on the UK's roads. And we've managed to maintain that figure really quite consistently for over a decade in the UK. So it's hardly surprising that people might think that that's an ambitious target and wonder whether it is achievable. But that doesn't for 1 minute mean we shouldn't have that vision. Because I think Vision Zero is the idea that we should be able to eradicate road death. But we do have some days in the year where we don't have any road death. So what did we do on those days? Why was it okay on those days? What did we do right on those days? And also, we have to strive towards zero because there can't be any other number. We can't even say one, even one. Whose family are we going to single out as being that one family that will be struck by the devastation of a road crash? Because it is devastating. And RoadPeace, who I work with, the national charity for road crash victims, we work with bereaved families, road crash victims, whose lives have been completely turned upside down by road death. And the ripple effect of a road crash as well. We look at the numbers, we talk about the numbers of people who are killed and seriously injured. But for every one of those people, there is a family, there's a community, there's colleagues, there's neighbours, there are so many people who are associated with that person who are going to be impacted as well, either directly or indirectly. And we had some research done a few years ago. Loughborough University did some research, and I think it was estimated that road deaths affect in one way or another, either directly or indirectly, around 500,000 people a year in that ripple effect that we talked about there. And that's the UK, and that's 1 year. So it's huge. It's really huge.
I think some key things you said there. I think, like you mentioned the phrase striving towards it. I think that when people hear the term Vision Zero or every day without a road death, they assume that's what we're after tomorrow. Now, obviously, it would be nice if it was tomorrow. That would be an ideal scenario. But I think if we're being realistic, we know it's not going to be clicky fingers tomorrow sorted. But it's working towards that goal. And I think the other thing, and you kind of touched on this, it's people not thinking it might be them. It's people saying, well, it's all right for those people to die because I don't know them. Then those 1,766 don't affect me, but they affect other people. But what if we told you that one of those number was going to be someone in your family? You'd probably take a different approach, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think so. And the amount of people that we've worked with and that we've supported who they didn't think they were going to be victims. They didn't think when they said goodbye to a loved one that they weren't ever going to see them again. And quite often that's the case with road death. People don't have a chance to say goodbye. People are killed instantly. And like you said, Terry, when you've looked on the RoadPeace website and you've seen our memorial, there's so many smiling faces of happy, healthy people who probably had their whole lives ahead of them. But when it comes to a road crash, it doesn't matter how happy, successful, healthy, whole life ahead of you you've got. It just strikes, and that's a life is just taken. And I think that's what is just so tragic about it, the sudden, violent nature of a road death. And people reach out to RoadPeace and they need our support through the system. And we help by supporting them through our helpline, but we've got befrienders, we've got local groups who support people in need. People can then seek that support that they need from people who've been there, had that lived experience of living following a crash and somehow being able to keep going. And I think it feels difficult for some people in the early days to ever think that they can live any sort of normal life again. But together, people slowly, step by step, find the way through the support of our groups and through our helpline. And a lot of people campaign because they feel like they want to do something positive. And that's where RoadPeace will help to strengthen victims' voices. If people want to be heard about what's happened to them, if they want to share their story, which many people want to do, to try and raise awareness about the risks. So, for example, with young drivers, which is very relevant to your audience, we're about to launch a campaign with a group of bereaved parents, actually, who've lost either young drivers or young passengers who were in the car of a young driver. And they're campaigning, they're calling for a government inquiry. That's going to be put out very soon. And I'll make sure that you get a copy of that, because we'd love to raise awareness about that campaign with you and through your audiences, just so you can see what we're doing. And our families who we're working with would love you to know and would love you to spread the word about it on any of your channels if you can.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's I don't know if this is the right word, interesting, but I also want to ask you this. Now, if this is a daft question, I apologize, but is the trauma and the coping following, losing someone through a crash different to, losing someone, I don't know, a heart attack or disease? Is it a different kind of trauma?
I think it largely is. I think, like I was saying, it's that sudden nature of it. 1 minute somebody was there, the next they weren't. I think people just know it's not on anyone's periphery. You don't think, like you say, we have an optimism bias, I think is the expression, isn't it, in psychology? Like, we don't think it's going to happen to us, but of course it does. And yeah, it's human nature to think that it won't happen to us. But yeah, we've said, we've had a very consistent numbers of road casualties now, sadly, around the sort of 1,700 level for the last 10, 12 years. And none of those people probably thought it was going to happen to them, but it did. And of course, that's the people who died. We're not even talking about the 120 odd thousand people who are injured. Serious, it's injured in some way in a crash.
Does RoadPeace support those as well, the injured, rather than just the families?
We do, but we generally find it's bereaved families and people that come to us seeking that support. Vast majority of people who do are bereaved.
I mean, with RoadPeace, you mentioned the campaign you've got going on, the ways you can support, and I want to come back and speak to you about the challenge, because I'm interested in that, because I think that's something instructors can get involved in. But the two things I want to mention as well, you touched on it before, is a memorial. And we were talking before, and I was saying to you that I don't get shaken up very easy. But on your website, which is roadpeace.org, there's a memorial section. And people have uploaded pictures of, loved ones that have been lost in collisions. I'm going to ask you about that later. But yeah, loved ones that have been lost. And it genuinely shook me. It rocked me. And I think it was, as you mentioned, it's all these people that just look smiley and happy and otherwise that they're just going on about the day. And then there's kids there. I think there was someone uploaded that was 5 years old, a picture of a 5-year-old kid. And it's like, this isn't right. Seeing that memorial, now, any driving instructors listen to this, please go and check it out. Go on roadpeace.org and look at the memorial. And this is something I will be sharing to my students. I have to find the right way to frame it, but I will be sharing this with my students, because that brings it home. Because I don't know anyone that's been died in a collision. I know people that have been collisions. I've been in 2 serious ones as a passenger, but luckily unscathed. But don't know anyone directly that's, we've lost in a collision. So it's kind of glossed over a little bit, but seeing those faces and all those people was just, I don't know, it brought it home. Is that something you hear a lot?
Yeah. I think, again, I think that's what makes it so different from illness, because chances are those people probably looked like that, looked happy, looked well, were content with their lives, were totally unsuspecting that anything was ever going to change. Not long before, right up to the moment that they were taken. And I think, this is not comparing it and saying that an illness is better, or that it's tragic if you lose someone in any circumstances. And we've all lost people close to us for different reasons. But I think that's something that people just say to us time and time again. There's just that disbelief because that person was so well and happy and otherwise totally fine, and they weren't even thinking. I mean, why would you? A 6-year-old, a 5-year-old, a child, you wouldn't ever think. And if you did think that something was going to put them at risk, it might not be road harm. But actually, worldwide, road death is the leading killer of people aged 5 to 29 years old. The leading cause of death. Yet we don't really know that. I think if you surveyed people in the street, would people know that? I think they'd probably say, oh no, I think I'm more worried, that my child could swallow something or choke, or, even when it comes to slightly older people or teens and young people, maybe it'd be drugs, maybe it'd be alcohol. Maybe people would think that things like that were going to be a concern, and that they were, trying to educate their kids around that first and foremost, and being safe out in the roads, walking around the streets, because of knife crime or gun crime even, or, those other things, drugs, alcohol that we think about. But no, it's road crime, road harm, which is actually causing more harm than any other harm with that age group.
Yeah. And that stat you mentioned there, is that one that clicked for you? Because I was kind of speaking about this before. I think there's a statistic that resonates with everyone. Mine was the 5 deaths a day on average. I know it's an average, but 5 deaths a day on roads. That's scary. When you step back and go 5 people every day, and we kind of accept it. And that was one that I heard first through Project Edward a few years ago. They were back on season 1 of this podcast. And that's when I started kind of rolling towards the road safety sector a little bit. Is that like the statistic that stands out for you?
I think there are a few. I think, yes, that shocked me when I found that out. And even working in road safety now for the last sort of 20 years, it wasn't for a long, long time that I knew that statistic and some of the others. Because even when you're in it, even when I was in that industry, it wasn't till I was working with RoadPeace and working with actual people behind that data, that casualty data that we see, that I actually really understood it and really got it. And that's when it really hit me just how tragic it is. And just how clueless we are in society about how tragic it is. And that's not right. Where's the outrage? Where's the anger? We're starting to see it. We're starting to see it. And sadly, the outrage and the anger has been coming from people who've been affected. And that's totally understandable and totally necessary, and all part of this victim's voice that we talk about, and amplifying victims' voices. But unfortunately, I think there can be an element of, and this is what bereaved families that we've worked with have said to me, is that people listen, but they don't necessarily hear, because they go, oh, you're grieving, you're bereaved, you almost as if that they shouldn't, that there's no need to act, perhaps. I don't know. Almost you would say that, you're bereaved, I'm going to support you in any way I can on the surface, but actually it's probably just inevitable. Somebody has to, it's that whole kind of thing, that feeling that maybe we have, is that, this is inevitable. People are going to be injured in crashes. People are going to die in crashes. It's got to be some family. Well, we would say, no, it hasn't got to be any family. And this is where Vision Zero comes in. But we are starting to see that outrage coming from the wider communities, people who haven't been victims, but have got to the point where they've seen so many incidents in their area. They don't want them or their families to be the victim next. So they're campaigning and speaking out and campaigning for change before they become victims. And it's so sad that it's had to come to that. But if people won't listen, if people in power, decision makers, won't listen to the bereaved families who've been calling for change and their anger and upset, then maybe they'll start listening to the communities coming together in the way that they are in Birmingham. Safe Streets Now is a group that's formed, that's actually across the country. But Birmingham has seen some horrendous incidents in recent months. And there was a story on the front page of the Birmingham Mail just the other day, which had around up to 20 faces. Again, those faces of those very well, happy people who were killed in crashes. And that's just in the last 2 months that they've been killed in the West Midlands area. And it's great to see the editor of the newspaper getting behind that campaign as well, because that's something that's been a bit lacking over the years. And you know, the media has an important role to play in this. I'm a former journalist. I know only too well about, you know, a newsworthy story and what sells a paper, or these days what makes people click on a website. But to see a responsible report like that with that outrage, look at these people, look at these faces, this should not be tolerated. You know, if only every newspaper across the country was running a similar front page every so often, maybe that would help. And we look to the media for their help in this. I know they want to sell papers, I know they want to get people reading their news, but at the same time they have such a sense of responsibility. Their language they use is so important. And you mentioned accident earlier. That's something we ask them time and time again. Please don't use the word accident. Please use the word crash. Please use the word collision. Again, a few years back, I might have thought, well, that's the word that, you know, accident is what people say in conversation. That's what your average person in the street is going to say, is accident. So we use, as a journalist, you would think, I will use the language of your average person. That's fine. But I don't think we can carry on just saying that forever. Surely you have a social, moral duty to help in this problem. If you could change your language around a disease or something like that, or if you could help educate people about getting checked out for a certain illness or, you know, something, wouldn't you hope that newspapers would support you, help run stories around that? You know, a public health issue. Why is road death and road harm any different? You know, there are things that you can and can't say, and you shouldn't write around things like suicide and, you know, things like that, which affects an awful lot of people, and it's the most horrendous, tragic thing. What we're trying to do is to get people to just stop and think about road death in the same way that we've perhaps looked at other things that seriously hurt people and kill people. And I think there's a tendency to be blasé and flippant. We've all got a car in our drive, most of us. We all use the roads. We just step out of the door. We go on with our lives. We're all in a rush quite often. We've all got our own things going on our heads. You know, mental health, that's another topic, but that is another thing that you can link into road safety, because are people leaving their stresses and worries and other things that are going on behind at the door? No, they're not. They're going to get in the car. They're going to walk down the road, cross the road with all of that going on. Humans are humans. And I think that's why, again, with Vision Zero, safe systems is so important, because humans make mistakes. We will all make mistakes. No one is saying we're never going to have a crash. But what we are saying is let's make sure that all of those systems are in place to make sure that if we do make a mistake, the the consequences aren't so severe that we're going to be seriously injuring or killing somebody.
Yeah. And look, a few things I want to touch back on there. And it's interesting to see about people just getting in the car and carrying on their business. I've got a friend of mine who's told me, well, she's not an instructor, she's just a mate, but whenever she gets in the car to drive, she always, before she even turns the engine on, she says to herself, this is the most dangerous thing I'll do today. And it's like, imagine if everyone got in the car thinking that way. That would probably in itself help reduce a few collisions. And, speaking of collisions again, I think that's something that we as instructors can do. Just on lessons, stop saying accidents. Accidents is something that you heard me before say it. It's like something I'm trying to get out of my vocabulary. When I think about it, I say collisions, but accident is the go-to. And I'm going to ask you a little bit more on that, because for me, my take on it is that, yes, accidents do happen, but to me, an accident is stubbing my toe or knocking a glass off. If I'm in a collision, especially if it's one that is my fault, calling it an accident to me is trivializing it. Is that where sort of yours and other academics are coming from in saying don't use accident, use collision or crash?
Yeah. Thank you for getting me back on track there, because I talked about topics just then and I did mention accident, and then I think I went off talking about something on the back of that. But yeah, the main point with crash and collision being better words than accident is accident suggests that it was avoidable. It could, it was inevitable. It was just one of those things. It's a bit of a cop-out, really. And like you say, spilling a drink or accidentally walking into somebody, you say, oh, that was an accident. Sorry, didn't mean to, that didn't mean for that to happen. But when it comes to road crashes, I think saying accident, it can be quite offensive to some of our members, actually. And when the media report on an accident, that's not a good word to use, because quite often we don't know what happened yet in the circumstances of that crash or collision. So crash or collision is a much more neutral way of explaining what's happened, as opposed to accident, which suggests that nobody was at fault. Maybe further down the line, if it's somehow proven it was a freak accident, then use the word. But generally speaking, if somebody was speeding, using a mobile phone, drink driving, drug taking, something else, then that isn't an accident. No, they probably didn't intend to cause any harm. I'm sure the majority of collisions, nobody meant to do any harm. But sadly, driving is a privilege. It's not a right. And I think people need to use vehicles and treat them with the respect that they deserve. It's a huge responsibility driving a vehicle. And like you said, somebody almost reminds themselves every time they get in the vehicle that is a dangerous thing to do. Nobody wants to terrify anyone, and especially when you're talking about new drivers and people learning, where there's a lot of I remember being really quite nervous and quite terrified on occasions when I was learning to drive. So the last thing you want to do is to, sort of scare people into not wanting to get behind the wheel at all. Of course, you want to encourage and support people to do that and to learn to drive it. And learning to drive is an amazing thing, and it gives you a real sense of freedom. But again, it is a privilege to be out there and to be using the roads. So I think, and something that always reminds me, my dad always used to say, my dad is no longer with us, but he always used to say to me, probably when I was learning to drive, my driving instructor used to say to me, and my dad would have been in his sort of 70s now, mid to late 70s, but he always used to say, my driving instructor used to say to me that you're driving a killing machine. This is a killing machine. Strangely enough, my auntie, who's a few years younger than my dad would have been, but she said her driving instructor, just the other day, she told me that when she learned to drive, her driving instructor said the same thing. And I think I mentioned this to you last time we spoke, Terry. I just found it was really interesting that she, of a similar generation, said the same thing. And it made me wonder if this was more of a consistent message that was being given out back then, I mean, we used to have horrendous road deaths back then. I'm sure, as time's gone on, they went really, really high. But maybe we did have more of a sense of appreciation of the motor car back when maybe not everybody was driving. Then it was a bit more. Not everybody had a car. Maybe that's part of this as well. Maybe so many people have vehicles these days. It's taken for granted that people are just jumping in their cars, going wherever. It's so easy to access a vehicle these days compared to maybe once upon a time. So maybe that's a part of this.
I think there's a sense of entitlement from people as well. My roads, my car. It was, an Englishman's home is his castle. I think that's changed now to an Englishman's car is his castle. It's. I don't know. I just think there's so many people that are, and I think it's shifted onto new drivers a lot and young drivers. And obviously they're high up in those stats of fatalities and collisions, young drivers. But why are they having those collisions? Why are those things going wrong? It's not because they can't drive a lot of the time. It's because they're having now to deal with the bad drivers on the road without an instructor next to them, and they're doing it by himself. And we've trained them to drive by themselves, but all of a sudden they're alone and dealing with these bad drivers. Whereas when they've got an instructor with them and a top box on, some of these bad drivers might give them a bit more space, or they'll overtake them rather than tailgate them. And I just wonder how much are we letting off some of the bad driving that goes on by not blaming, but using the stats of the young drivers. But that's not maybe a conversation for another day, because I do want to bring it back to RoadPeace, because there's one other thing I wanted to mention in particular about the website. Something I only found recently, to be honest, which was the dashboard, which shows you where all the collisions and fatalities are. So for anyone listening, again, go to roadpeace.org. You can find the dashboard there. Put in your postcode or your area, and it will highlight all the sounds horrible saying it. It'll highlight all the fatalities and collisions in your area. That's scary. That gave me a very different feeling compared to seeing the memorial. That was, wow, that's like my street. There was one on my street. It's mental. And these are ones that I didn't know about. And then you obviously zoom out a bit and you just see, this is Bradford. This is not, says loads. And then you obviously lots of different cities and see them. So I don't know if this was your premise, but why is that there? What was the idea behind that dashboard? Was that aimed at?
I think our members who campaign, as well as ourselves who campaign, we want to be informed about the problem and where things are happening. But that's really for our local groups, so that they can do their own. They can reach out to media and be informed when they're speaking to the media, when they're trying to put across and raise awareness about the problems that we have on the roads in their area. And it's great for people to have access to that, because again, that's another way of just making sure that information is out there, that we're raising awareness about the problem, because people just don't understand the problem.
We're going to talk in a minute about maybe what instructors can do with RoadPeace and that side of it, but I think that's a big one. I mentioned potentially sharing the memorial stuff with our learners, but I think that dashboard is somewhere that I could start highlighting on first lessons, and not in a scary way, but in a way of, look, this is real. This stuff happens. Or even just, did you know that street down there, something happened down there then, or whatever. Maybe there's a better way to say it, so you're not accidentally saying, if you're talking to someone's sister or something. But, I think that's something that could be shared with our students as well. But I want to ask you about the RoadPeace Challenge. I'm going to open this quite blankly. Tell me about the RoadPeace Challenge 2024.
Okay, so the RoadPeace Challenge 2024 is bringing together emergency services. Mostly at the moment, we've got a lot of police forces signing up. We've got the National Police Chiefs Council, National Fire Chiefs Council, lots and lots of wonderful supporters and individuals and communities. And lots of bereaved families who are obviously members of RoadPeace, who are going to be collectively walking, cycling, running, horse riding, actively travelling 1,766 miles, which represents the 1,766 people who were killed in 2022 on the UK's roads alone. That's the latest verified data we have casualty data from the Department for Transport. So we're using that 2022 data. And we're going to start at the 1,766th mile, and we're going to count our way down, everybody doing a little bit throughout this week of action, chipping away at that total. So somebody at, North Yorkshire Police might do 20 miles, and a team down in Essex might do 50 miles, and we'll be monitoring that total. They'll be submitting their total miles covered each day, and we'll be chipping away at that on a total on the RoadPeace website so people can see where we've got to. And we're going to be getting our way down to zero to mirror our efforts in terms of Vision Zero and trying to eradicate road death. And then we're all going to come together at the end of the week on the 19th of May at the National Memorial Arboretum in Staffordshire, where we've got the RoadPeace Wood. So we're inviting people to come and be there for that. More information will be revealed about that. So maybe I can make sure that you get some updates out to anyone on your mailing list or any of your networks. It'd be good to spread the word about that. Particularly anyone in that sort of Midlands area. It's not too far away, and it's a lovely place to visit. If you haven't been to the National Memorial Arboretum, I'd highly recommend it. So maybe the 19th of May is a good day to try it. It's always been boiling hot in previous years on that week, so you may well pick a good day to come along.
See, I think that's a great initiative, and I like the fact you highlight that number 1766. But again, it just feels a bit flippant, doesn't it? When we say that number, it's almost as if, obviously you're not, but almost as if we're accepting it. It's just like, oh yeah, that was this year. And also, it's quite disappointing that I appreciate these things take time, but we're having to revert back to that 2022 data rather than 2023. We're in March now of 2024, but we work with what we must. But I think that's great. And I've said this a couple of times today, but I think this is something instructors can embrace in, because I mentioned this to you before. I think that driving instructors embrace road safety. I believe that, or at least almost all of them do. But we don't embrace the road safety sector. And I think that part of what I want to do with this series of podcasts is change that a little bit and bridge that gap and bring you guys over and bring us a bit closer to you. And I think that even if someone can't take part in this challenge for some reason, because everyone's got the limitations, it's something that they could still be sharing, isn't it? It's something that they could still go online and shout about. And I'm sure you're biased when I ask you this, but I'd be interested in your opinion. If you were looking for a driving instructor for you or a family member or something, and you saw two side by side, and they're both identical, except one's championing your RoadPeace event, which one are you more likely to go to?
Definitely the one that's supporting the RoadPeace event. And I know that makes me sound very biased, but this is something we were talking about earlier. What could be more relevant for a driving instructor and a business that is all based on the road, is all about the road and being safe on the road and educating a new, fresh driver to be safe on the road? What could be more relevant than a road safety campaign and a charity that supports crash victims? But actually, a lot of what we do is preventative. Like you said, we campaign for change. We campaign for changes to the law. We campaign for justice. We want to see a day when there's no RoadPeace needed, because we've helped to reduce deaths so much that nobody really needs us. And hopefully, we get to zero one day, in which case there won't be any need for RoadPeace. And that will be a great day. But for now, sadly, we're quite a long way off that. And we would love to have the support of the driving instructor community. And we'd love to work with that community more closely. Again, what could be more relevant than for us working together? It doesn't make any sense for us to be separate. And I think, like you said, maybe driving instructors haven't been that involved in the road safety community in the past, but we've certainly not done a very good job. And I've been in the road safety community for 20 years at actually reaching out to driving instructors. But wouldn't it be great to go, right, let's start afresh now. Let's do what makes sense. Let's try and look for opportunities to work together. And this challenge would be a great way of doing that. And like you say, there are lots of ways you can get involved. So if you wanted to get involved, maybe you're a single driving instructor who works on their own, But actually, when you finish your shift, you like to go and have a walk, or you like to run, or you like to cycle. Or even if you don't normally do those things, but you think you'd like to do it during this week of action, just sign up to take part. And that is right from roadpeace.org on the main homepage of the website. You can sign up clearly at the top of the page to take part in the RoadPeace Challenge. All you have to do is fill in a few details and just say how you'd like to support the week of action. And like I say, that can just be a few miles, just you on your own. And all you have to do is submit your miles. If you want to set up some kind of just giving and get people who know you to support you, that's fine. Or you can just share the main RoadPeace Challenge just giving link every now and then. If you use Facebook or something like that, you can say, I'm going to run 10 miles this week towards this total for the RoadPeace Challenge, and I'm going to do my bit. Maybe somebody will give you £10, maybe they'll give you £5, maybe you'll make nothing, but what you will do is you'll raise awareness in the process of just being part of this. So even if you're just posting about this event during the week on whatever platform you use, RoadPeace is on Facebook, we're on Twitter. I can't call it Twitter anymore, it's X, but I can't just say X because it doesn't sound right, does it?
No.
We're on X, we're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, and we're on Instagram. So and we'll be using the hashtags RoadPeace Challenge 2024 and 1766 miles together, hashtag 1766 miles together, which again is a great opportunity for small businesses because you get to be part of something there. And who knows, you'll probably get some new followers out of this. So there's something in it for everybody. Not only are you doing your bit for our event and helping spread the word, but you'll probably get some likes and some shares from us. And we've got quite a large following. And who knows who's going to see your post? And like you say, Terry, who knows who's going to see that you support these initiatives? And actually, what could look better for you as a business that works in the forefront of road safety, really, supporting an event like this? So yeah, we'd love to have you on board.
And just as a cheeky one for anyone listening, because I know some people will turn off when I say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. There's a Driving Instructor Awards at the end of every year. And how good will it sound if your learners are voting for you and saying, oh, my instructor joined in and did this? That'll get you some votes. I do usually like to finish on a positive, and that's a perfect place to finish. But I do want to come back and ask you almost a negative, if you like, because you mentioned there about you working in the sector for 20 years and how it's never really reached out overly to instructors. Now, why do you think that is?
Oh, do you know what? I don't know. I really don't know. And I think there's a lot of national working going on, but there's a heck of a lot of local working going on. And it has been like that forever. And I think people do their own thing locally. And maybe there has been some great work going on with driving instructors in some areas of the country that I've never got to know of. But I guess, wouldn't it be great to think that you were all part of a body, a national body that we could reach out to as a national charity, for example, as RoadPeace? It'd be great to connect with you. So that's why I look to you, Terry, because I think it'd be great that you can reach out to your members. And obviously that's not going to be every driving instructor out there, but I think that'd be a great way in one go of reaching an audience, the audience we want to reach. But I'm not sure. I think somehow the problem of road safety is so huge and there are so many people who have a role to play. But I am surprised. I am surprised that we've not got further with this relationship in the past. Because really, when you pick it apart, who is more appropriate for the road safety? And not necessarily RoadPeace, but who is in the industry as a whole, the road safety community, who could be more appropriate for us to reach out to than a driving instructor who is there from the start, that person who is going to shape the driver of tomorrow and prepare the driver of tomorrow for being a safe and competent, respectful road user. And we definitely need to be speaking to driving instructors. We need to be teaming up, working together with our shared purpose. And I'm sure that driving instructors will get a lot from being part of the road safety community, but we would get a lot from being part of your world as well. So please do reach out to RoadPeace. I've got connections within the industry, so having been in it for so long, so even if I'm not working with my RoadPeace hat on, I'll be forever thinking of opportunities to link people in with relevant people. So if anybody really, really does want to be part of the road safety community, please do explore that. Please do reach out via Terry to me, or try and contact us via the RoadPeace website. And yeah, who knows where it could take us.
Well, you've taken my slightly negative question and turned it into a positive. So I'm really pleased with that. And I'm looking forward to seeing how the challenge does. So, maybe you'd like to join us again afterwards and let us know how we got on.
Yeah, that'd be great. And hopefully we might see you, Terry, putting on a RoadPeace t-shirt during that week of action.
I intend to. For some reason, the 19th is ringing bells. And I don't know whether that's got penciled in to come, or it's because I've got something else going on.
Something else.
And I can't remember which. But
maybe somebody's doing a test or something like that. You don't want to, you need to check your diary. But if you do happen to be available at some point during that week and you'd like to do something, then please let us know.
Where there is a will, there is a way. That's what we'll leave it as. But yeah, it's been a pleasure. Links to everything you mentioned there, we'll put in the show notes for people. But do you want to take a moment just to remind people, where they can find you or anything like that?
Yeah, please come and check us out. Come and have a look around the RoadPeace website. We're at roadpeace.org. And you can find all sorts of information on there about the RoadPeace Challenge, our campaigns, our memorial, our dashboard, like Terry said, which is accessed from the top of the screen, where you can click on that and look at all sorts of interesting data, not just about casualties, about offences, traffic officer numbers, things like that you will find incredibly useful if you use the roads for your work, which you do. So please come and have a look.
Right. Well, big thank you for joining us today. I've really enjoyed it, and it's been interesting, bridging that gap a little bit more.
Thank you.
So I've now got the pleasure to be joined by the man behind Bright Coaching and the new deputy chair of the ADI NJC, Stewart Lochrie. How are we doing, Stewart?
I'm good, Terry. How are you?
All the better for seeing your smiley face. And congratulations on being the new deputy chair of the NJC.
Thank you very much. Nobody else wanted to do it, I think. I'm told.
I'm sure there was some competition in there somewhere. I'm sure there was. Let's get onto this then, because I wanted to get you on. I was quite keen because you've obviously now sponsored the Instructor Podcast with Bright Coaching, or sponsored season 7 at least. And Bright Coaching is something that really embraces the concept of road safety and the road safety sector and the academics behind that sector. And obviously that's the theme for this season. So we've just heard the episode with Rebecca Morris, and one of the questions I asked her at the end there was, why is there a gap? And I phrased it as instructors, we may embrace road safety, but we don't embrace the road safety sector, and the road safety sector doesn't embrace us. And Rebecca kind of struggled to give a definitive answer, and I've got like 10,000 different ideas running through my head. So I'm keen to know, why do you think there's a gap?
It's really interesting, isn't it? First of all, really good episode. Really enjoyed listening to Rebecca. We can maybe touch on a couple of those things later. I don't think it's not the fault of driving instructors. It's not the fault of the road safety charities like RoadPeace. It's not the fault of the academics. We just are a very fragmented sector. I think, and this has bothered me for a while, we were just talking about it off air there, part of my role with Bright Coaching, I want part of my role with Bright Coaching to be specifically to bridge that gap between the academics and the practitioners. And that's something I know that, and you know as well, that the academics are really keen on, that taking the hypothetical, taking the evidence-based research and getting it into the hands of people on the ground, who are guys like you and me and all the driving instructors across the country. And then we have the charities, and then we have the road safety campaigners like RoadPeace, Vision Zero, and the people at Vision Zero. And then we also have organisations like Road Safety GB, who kind of, and this is maybe when I get probably the more confused. Road Safety GB seem to be kind of all-encompassing and gathering all these things together, but driving instructors are not there. I don't get it, and I don't know why. I don't understand it. I don't think we do ourselves any favours. But I think Rebecca is on the record as saying that she doesn't know why it is either, and we could try harder, and other organisations could try harder as well. So we all want it to happen. We all want it to happen, and it's not going to happen overnight. We know as well. We just got to keep pushing. We just got to do little nudges. Anything we can do. The stuff that you're doing by getting these people on is a great start. We just got to keep it going.
I think there's some great, just on today's episode, there's some great resource available from RoadPeace that we can use. And I think one of the things that I'm learning as I'm recording more of these episodes is, I think my initial thought was, how can we bring this into lessons? And I think I'm edging away from that now. Because I think if we're covering the higher levels of the goal for driver education, we're kind of covering the bulk of what we need there. But what we can get is resources and information. I use the tagline for this podcast for a long time that is information and inspiration, and we can get that from these sector. And I think that's a big thing. It's not necessarily looking at, right, we're going to have a 40-minute conversation with someone at the side of the road about the number of people that have died on this road and look at these stats showing us. We can send that to them, and things like the Drive Fit video, which I shared to my premium members and publicly actually last year, that gets sent to the parents of all my learners, and they're not all going to watch it. Some of them will watch it. Some of the ones that watch it will actually go, "That's good," and some of them even text me and say, "Thank you for sending this. This has made me look at things differently." And it's like, I think one of the traps we fall into sometimes is, because we can't change everyone, we don't try. And I tend to look at it slightly differently. It's like, if I can make one parent a year look differently upon their child learning to drive, then I've made a difference. Do you think that's, one of the problems we come across, not being able to change everyone?
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's two things there. I'm very guilty of wanting everyone to have the same attitude towards this as I do, and feel as passionate about it as I do. And I know that that's not the case. So Chris Benstead helped me with this recently, on a conversation that we had, about everyone has different interpretations of road safety. It means different things to different people. And if people are not engaging in road safety, then there is a reason for that. You need, as a driving instructor here, and to paraphrase Chris, you need to get the knowledge and you need to get the experience, and that takes time. You don't get, it doesn't come in a jiffy bag with your green badge. You need to go out and you need to do the work. You need to want to learn more, and it's about not judging people who are not there with you yet, which is really important. And I think the second point, you brought in parents of learner drivers. So with inbred coaching, that's a big thing for me. I talk about a paradigm shift in the way that driving lessons are perceived within the general public. Because you and I and all the driving instructors in the country know that parents don't know anything about what it's like to learn to drive, broadly speaking. They don't know how much more difficult it is, the demands of the test centres, the roads around test centres are becoming more complicated, busier roundabouts, etc. But we're all very good at moaning about that and just stating it as fact, but then we don't do anything about it. And it's the same thing. If we need to get our hands on resources, we need to upskill ourselves, not necessarily with coaching approaches and coaching techniques and GDE. We actually just, to address this issue, we need to become better communicators and contract in with the parents and the stakeholders to say, things have changed. And that's a skill. You can't just say, here's a text, things have changed, it's different now, it's going to be 50 hours. That doesn't cut it in any industry. It has to be a conversation with parents, in the same way that we have to open up conversations with driving instructors about this kind of stuff. And again, to the wider industry, as we touched on a few minutes ago, with road safety charities, road safety organisations, academics, etc.
And I think that communication is key. And as I kind of touched on before, and I think you mentioned it then, is we could send those resources or we could pass that information on to everyone. We can't force people to take it, but we can provide it. And I think this is the key thing, because I think of the SAFE system. So Vision Zero is kind of encompassing the SAFE system, which is safe roads, safe speeds, safe vehicles, safe road users, and post-crash care. So if we use RoadPeace as the example, RoadPeace is all based around post-crash care. So that's what they deal in. But they still campaign and promote safe roads, safe speeds, safe vehicles, that kind of stuff. And I think that's what I want to see us do more. Because our main thing out of that safe system is going to be safe road users. That's what we deal with day to day. But that doesn't mean we can't campaign for this other stuff. So again, we use RoadPeace as an example. Why can't we share on our socials, on our podcasts, in our blogs, in our courses, this stuff from RoadPeace about post-crash care so that it's spread far and wide and we're actually then getting involved. I say it doesn't have to be just on the lesson. So do you think we can, maybe campaign's the wrong word, but campaign and promote more around this stuff as well?
Oh, definitely. First of all, I saw you looking at your screen there, so I know you've got the safe system.
Oh, yeah. I always forget one.
No, quite right, quite right. Yes, I was on a driving instructor's website the other day, and he had reference to the safe system. Just randomly, I didn't go looking for it. It was just a driving instructor who I hadn't heard of before, and I checked out his website, and he had the safe system logo there, which made me feel really, really good, really, really positive. I think he was clearly a new ADI, so hopefully that's maybe a sign of that things are starting to change. Absolutely no reason at all why we can't be including references to safe system kind of stuff with the resources that we give to parents, that we deal with learner drivers. And in terms of safe road users, I mean, this was in my Megan R1 presentation, wasn't it? Where I talked about the safe system and how we are a very tiny part. We probably are a very tiny part of that road users, relatively speaking, to the whole model. But even within that tiny part, we probably don't do as much as we can do. So there's scope for us to improve our own little part, as well as do the things that you're referring to, and pay attention to the other areas of it and raise awareness of those, as Rebecca's doing.
I did a live for someone the other day, and the one element of the safe system I forgot was safe road users, which you would think would be the one I would remember. But before we move on, is there anything else you want to just touch on? Because again, I just wanted to get your overall thoughts on this. So anything else you want to touch on the episode or this topic in general?
So yeah, just really encouraging to hear Rebecca Morris talk about things like optimism bias, which is obviously biases are a part of driver psychology, which is, it's just the area that I'm really, really interested in. It's why part of the reason we have Pride Coaching. And I don't believe that the average driving instructor in the street understands biases or knows anything about them. It should be in our training. It should be in our PDI training, without a doubt, the same as we should have the GDE matrix. And Rebecca was using it in the context of, probably more within her context of RoadPeace. And we don't think that our families are going to be the ones involved in crashes. We don't think that it's our kids who are going to be run over round the corner from our house, and all this kind of stuff. And we use it in terms of training young drivers. She's talking about it in terms of families and the kind of wider devastation that is caused. So it was just interesting to hear it used in the same industry, the same kind of general ballpark, but in a slightly different context, which just goes to show that the psychology around road safety is broadly similar. Yeah, we all have a lot to learn from each other.
And I do wonder if that's where the roadblock, excuse the pun, comes in sometimes, in when people like Rebecca Morris and Liz Box and whoever else, David Crundle, they talk about this stuff. They talk about it like we know, even if whether they're speaking to us or anyone else. And I think because of a lot of instructors, including myself a couple of years ago, didn't know what they're talking about. It's easy just to switch off because they're not explaining what it means. And I'm not the most well-educated person in the world. If someone uses a word that's got more than 6 letters, I'm lost. And I will defer or whatever. So I do just wonder how much of an obstacle that plays. But it's not an excuse. It's not an excuse.
It's not an excuse. I was speaking to an academic very recently, and I was struck by the amount of time she referred to the fact that driving instructors have all this coaching experience. She was saying, yeah, and the coaching that you guys do, and I'm kind of nodding, going, yeah, we all do it, yeah. So yeah, there's a little bit of maybe a misconception that because the standards check in the Part 3 has changed to include these CCL elements, that all of a sudden we're all fully qualified coaches. And we're working on it at Bright Coaching. But it'll be a while. It'll be a while. Was it Mick Knowles that said he delivered a bit of training and he said that's 10 people through on that course, 39,900 to go. Which I quite liked.
It's ticking them off as you go.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of Bright Coaching, the last time you were on the Instructor Podcast, it was back on season 1, episode 1, talking to us about Bright Coaching and what you had coming up and that kind of stuff. So since then, you have kicked off. You've got your first cohort through. You started on that. So tell us a bit about how that's gone and tell us about the name change for the qualification as well.
So very quickly, the name change is a change from a professional development award. And I found out after I got my roll-up banners printed, rather annoyingly, that we could actually call it a professional diploma. It required a couple of tweaks to assessment criteria and all that kind of stuff. And it pushed it into a slightly different category of qualification, but nothing that is going to be of interest to too many people other than the geeks at the SQA. For our purposes, it's a vocational qualification. It's very niche because it covers these 3 different things. It's not a purely coaching qualification. It's not a psychology qualification. It just brings fundamental elements of all together. That allowed us to change to a professional diploma. And I was working on that right up to launch, which, as you say, was recently. We launched cohort 1 on the 4th of March at Dakota, and it was brilliant, Terry. It was really, really good. I couldn't have asked for it to go any better. Just really, generally when something launches in business or anywhere else, any kind of similar industries, and it's training based, you'll get first adopters, and first adopters are always really keen. They tend to have good knowledge about your subject area already. So we have some really high quality trainers. We've got audit trainers on cohort 1, but we also have PDIs or recently qualified PDIs who are just hitting the ground running, wanting to carry on with their development. We have driving instructors who have been driving instructors for 20 years, and I met at conferences, and they've just kind of realised, well, I don't know what's inspired them. Maybe it's just the bright orange. I've got my bright orange t-shirt on today. They've just been struck by the fact that it's something new, and this is what they are going to go on and do their CPD with. So all levels of experience, all levels of knowledge, and all just working together. So they're all in their little groups doing their coaching triads, learning from each other as much as learning from myself and my fellow lead trainers. Really good atmosphere. We put the feedback forms out, and I'm in the process of just going through them and taking all the kind of things that we can do to improve, which is valid because it's the first time we've done it. There's definitely ways for us to improve and get it better. But just really encouraged by the positive feedback about the content specifically. And the way that we've structured the day and the way that we're explaining it, the feedback about that is as good as I could have ever hoped for, to be honest.
Excellent. Well, I mean, I'm glad to hear it's got off to a good start. But I also want to ask you about the Bright Coaching Suppers. I'm intrigued by these because these have come in since we last spoke. So I think these are just for the people that are on the course, aren't they?
Yeah, it's just like an added bonus for our candidates. I always had in mind that I was going to do this. And they're just monthly kind of check-in CPD sessions where I'll have guest speakers on to talk about interesting things in the industry, hopefully spinning it towards the content that's on the course. That's what I'm trying to do. So when people come on, I'm trying to get them to talk about things that are specifically behavioural change related or specifically coaching related or, whatever. Occasionally we won't have speakers and we will have just check-in sessions for the candidates. So it'll be like a big virtual group hug where people can just say, oh, I'm really struggling with this assignment, and again, they can just learn from each other. They've got a WhatsApp group where they're all away typing away furiously just now about their first assignments. None of us are in it, very deliberately, so they can just all help each other. The supper clubs, very happy that you're going to come on later in the year and help us about that, but development and CPD, we can kind of finalise something, a title near at the time. But yeah, I'm grateful to you for that.
Cool. So if someone was intrigued, where's the best place for them to go to find out more?
So to find out more about Bright Coaching, at the moment we are selling cohort 2, which starts on the 1st of July 2024. So 3 months to go. It's about half full, cohort 2, so still places left on that. brightcoaching.net is the place to go. We also have a Facebook page as well at facebook.com/brightcoaching, or just give me a shout on Facebook as well.
Cool. Well, the links for that will be in the show notes, but, just type it in the website and you'll find it. But I also wanted to just ask you why you're on here, because you've obviously come on board for season 7 as the sponsor, and it seemed appropriate with the road safety theme. But it was something you first inquired with me about a while ago, wasn't it? It was just shortly after we first met at one of the expos. So what made you want to jump on board as a sponsor for the Instructor Podcast?
So a couple of things. When you launch a new business, you need to get your brand out in front of people's eyes. I'm a business person. I know that as much as anyone. But as we talked about on the very first time I came on your podcast, you quite rightly pointed out the fact that I'm not particularly well known south of the border. I'm okay north of the border, relatively speaking, but I do have some work to do on building my profile down there, and for people to trust me in the way that they trust some of the other national trainers. Folk like Bob Morton. Somebody like Bob is known up and down this country. It doesn't matter where you go, people will know him. And that's my job. That's what I need to do. If people are going to benefit from my training course, they can't go on the training course if they can't find us. But more specifically, to tie up with the Instructor Podcast, and again, I'm sure I say this every time I talk to you, Terry. That must be why you asked me the question. The stuff that you do is incredible. It's fresh, it's exciting. The people that you have on within the industry, and probably more specifically, you do this better than anyone, is people from outside the industry coming in talking about things that we can use as trainers, as coaches, all this kind of stuff. That really appeals to me. I want to support organizations and companies and people who do things the right way as well. So I'm supporting Intelligent Instructor and the NGC, because I fundamentally believe that these conferences change the industry. I'm supporting the Instructor Podcast for exactly the same reason, just to make sure that you're able to keep doing what you're doing, and helping driving instructors to improve.
Well, I think you're right on two fronts there. So first of all, yes, whenever you need a confidence boost, I reach out to you. But also, Glasgow is now in my one of top 3 most listened to cities in the UK. So I've cracked Glasgow, which is quite good.
That's good to know. And for the record, we've talked about this before. It's not just me.
Over and over and over again. But yeah, no, I really appreciate you coming on today for this. I thought it was good to get you on the first episode to catch up around this stuff. But I think it'll be great to get you back on as well at the end of this season, to maybe reflect back on the season as a whole. Are you up for joining me again at the end of the season?
Definitely, Terry. I'd love to do that. I'll obviously be listening to all the episodes at least 20 times, as we've mentioned. And yeah, we can definitely do that at the end of the season.
Cracking. Well, thank you for joining us today, Stuart. Pleasure as always.
Thanks, Terry. Have a good one.
So a big thank you to both Rebecca and Stuart there. I hope you got as much from this episode as I did. I felt like, in particular with Rebecca, it was fascinating to hear him from the perspective of someone within RoadPeace that deals with that side of it, the side that we don't enjoy talking about. And it's the thing I'm looking for from this series, is to provide that inspiration, that information, that alternative viewpoint. And I'm not expecting everyone from listening to these episodes to start doing fun runs and raising money and spending hours at the side of the road talking about this stuff. But there are things that we can do, that we can bridge this gap between us and them and make it so it isn't us and them. We can be sharing resources. We can be talking about this on our social media. We can include this in websites. We can share stuff with parents. We can include it in our conversations. So I really hope that over the next 10 weeks, you start to, find some things that inform and inspire. I really do hope that. And if you have enjoyed this episode and you would like to support the show, then consider signing up to the Instructor Podcast Premium by signing up to there for as little as £10 a month. It goes a long way to help him with the finances and time involved in creating this show. But not only that, you would also get access to over 75 hours worth of exclusive content to help you become an even better driving instructor. So if you want to enhance your CPD with what a lot of my subscribers refer to as the best value CPD in the industry, or you simply want to help with the running of this show, then you can head over to www.theinstructorpodcast.com for more information and to sign up, or you can use a direct link in the show notes, and I will be eternally grateful. But for now, let's just keep raising standards.
The Instructor Podcast with Terry Cook, talking with leaders, innovators, experts and game changers about what drives them.
Are you just hanging about to see if I say anything amusing or interesting at the end of this episode? Because probably not. Although, do check out the 1 Minute Driving Instructor Tips podcast. Lots of useful stuff over there. Have a great day.